It's time for Voice of Indie. Your hosts today are Beam Weeks, author, producer, and marketing monster for independent multimedia publisher Fresh Ink Group, and Stephen Gies, author, producer, composer, and publisher for Fresh Ink Group.
And welcome, everybody. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Welcome to episode number 11 of the Voice of Indie podcast. I am your host, Beam Weeks. And joining me, as usual, is my partner in crime, Mr. Stephen Gies. How you doing tonight, Stephen?
Pretty good. Hello, everybody. As always, I want to remind you that you can find us over on Twitter at #FreshInkGroup. We're monitoring live during the show, so if you want to leave a comment or a funny picture or ask a question of today's guests, that's #FreshInkGroup over on Twitter.
And you can also join us on the telephone if you want to call in with a comment or a question for tonight's guest. That is 516-453-9902. Once again, that is 516-453-9902.
We want to remind listeners that all of these podcasts that we've been doing each week, we are archiving them. You can find them on Blog Talk Radio. You can go to freshinkgroup.com and click on the podcast tab and find them all there. You can go to YouTube and search for the Fresh Ink Group channel. And by the way, while you're there, we have 97 subscribers, and we'd really like to break 100 pretty soon.
Yeah.
You can also find our podcasts over at beamweeks.com, and we're working on adding them to the member pages and to stephengies.com soon. So we're going to have these things everywhere, and we encourage you to go listen to previous episodes.
And I have made a note I will upload these to stephengies.com tomorrow or the day after. So I've got a note for that. Now, listeners, today we're shifting gears. We are kind of moving away from the author program, and we're moving into indie music and the musicians behind some of the great indie music. Ron and Zach Tippen of the Alterna prog band Wide Track. Stephen, tell us a little bit about this band.
Wide Track is the musical partnership of Ron Tippen and his 16-year-old son, Zach Tippen. The duo's Alterna prog, and that's in quotes, sound strikes a balance between the moody, deep undertones of such progressive groups as Pink Floyd, Radiohead, Porcupine Tree, the Mars Volta, and more, with the heaviness of alternative and hard rock bands like Soundgarden, Queens of the Stone Age, Tool, STP, and more. Beginning in January of last year, the father-son team wrote, recorded, and released one new song each month, marking Zach's debut as a songwriter and recording engineer, as well as the first time Ron has written Wide Track music with another person. The 12 songs comprise Wide Track's fourth album, The Unwakening, released on April 23rd on Zach's 16th birthday. The band was in the process of booking live dates throughout 2020, but those plans have been put on hold due to the current pandemic crisis. In the meantime, they are writing, recording, and playing live streaming performances. They're also going to give away some of their music today. If you will go to their Facebook page, Wide Track Band, and leave a comment in the next 4 or 5 days, you could be selected as one of the people to receive a free copy of their latest album.
And with that, welcome to the show, Ron and Zach Tippen.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We are doing great. Great to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to this, getting into the whole music scene, and especially with some Michigan rockers. So that's near and dear to my heart. So anything you want to add to the bio there?
You know, we have a show, and I keep meaning to tell people about it. We're playing the Crowfoot in downtown Pontiac on November 7th, Saturday, with 8 other bands, and we're going to be the second to last just before the headliner. Doors at 5 p.m. I think that probably puts us on around 9. But tickets are on our website. We're kind of doing a pay what you want thing. Tickets are $17 at the door, but we're just trying to.
What's your website?
WideTrackBand.com.
All right. Now I understand you guys are actually filming a video of this show too.
Yeah. We play so infrequently, especially with the COVID thing these days. And the stage there is just so great. We figured it'd be a perfect opportunity to finally get a live recording, and so that should be exciting.
So can you explain what this term is, Alterna Prog Rock?
I'm going to let Zach take that one.
Oh, thank you.
He's nice, isn't he, Zach?
What's that?
I said he's a great guy, huh, Zach?
Oh, I'll say. On the Alterna Prog, we are big fans of 70s progressive music, bands such as Yes, King Crimson, ELP, Genesis. But we're also fans of the 90s alternative bands, more in the Radiohead, even Soundgarden, if you go so far, and Mars Volta. But the ones that kind of more quirky sound to them, rather than straight prog. But because we love both of these types of music so much, it's kind of manifested itself into the music that we write, and hence our titling of the genre.
Yeah, we were noting recently that it's kind of funny that a lot of these hard rock bands, like I think I actually heard Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age say that he hates progressive rock, and so there's kind of this unlikely pairing of styles, which we always thought it was interesting to take elements of things that we like and not be held to the the rules of the genre, so to speak, and just kind of take what we like and use it.
Well, that's kind of odd that Josh would say that, because he's got such a wide-ranging group of influences in his own music, so that's kind of odd. Now, the 70s groups that you just named, I know those are all near and dear to Steven's heart there. Those were some of his bands.
Yeah, I grew up in the 70s, went to high school in the 70s, and did college between 76 and 80. And back then, my bands were Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Gentle Giant. I haven't heard you mention Gentle Giant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
King Crimson, anybody who was doing the progressive stuff. And I was a keyboard player who I played in a professional band starting at age 15 with a bunch of guys who were in their 30s and had management and all that kind of stuff. So I got to be in a band where I had to learn 400 songs, but at the same time play with those guys on after hours and work on Genesis and Yes and write original things that were like that too. So all you got to do is mention your prog rock roots, and I am a fan. I'm right there paying attention to what you're doing and admiring the fact that all these years later, people are still recognizing what a great turning point that was in the development of progressive music.
Yes,
indeed. You said a mouthful there, Stephen. I mean, it's when Zach started playing, seeing him, the first day that he came and said, "Hey, check it out! I learned some bass from some Yes stuff." I mean, that was one of those proud parent moments there.
Chris Squire, man, you're learning from Chris Squire. You can't do any better.
No, yeah, and and of course Rush was always one of our favorite bands. And not to mention, everywhere we go, people tell Zach he looks like Geddy Lee.
Geddy Lee.
I think he had a plan. He was playing guitar and singing, and he didn't have a bass player. And at the moment, I hadn't really played too much bass, but he started showing me all these bands with cool bass players, and says, I actually need a bass player for my band. And at the time, I didn't know that that's the ultimate trap for guitarists. Is, hey, we need a bass player, but here I am.
And now he's taking over the whole. Yeah, he's taking over.
Zach, are you hip to Stanley Clarke yet?
Oh, you better believe it.
Okay, I was going to say we might need to have a conversation afterwards. I was lucky enough to see Stanley Clarke do a lead as a concert in Memphis earlier this year. Probably one of the last shows that happened before things started closing down. And there is no other bass player who can be the lead performer of an entire concert and carry it like him.
Hey, we're getting more and more jealous by the second.
Listen, we do have a caller. You guys want to take a call?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, let's go to the phone. Hello, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Kent. I am from Tampa Bay, Florida.
Hi,
Howdy,
Ken.
Kent.
Beam, I would just like to say, huge fan. I love your writing. Geez, as well
Thank
as you
you.
know, your writing's outstanding. And,
Well, thank you.
But I know it pertains to.
You're welcome to call every week.
Well, thank you. And I will. A question for Zach is, how did it? I'm from Michigan originally, and a friend of mine sent me a link somehow to you guys, and I listened to it, and I can't find it, but it set me back a little bit. Zach, I was just wondering, how did you get turned on to music at such a young age? Was it your father?
That's the thing. I think I owe it a lot to my father that he never really pushed music on me. He did his own thing and I did my own thing. When I was real little, he never wanted me to play guitar or follow in his footsteps or anything, which I find really respectable considering how many parents, their only relationship with the kids is through the stuff that, they're familiar with. And, I think that's part of the reason that I gravitated towards it is because it was sort of a mystery. I wasn't introduced to it at such a young age or anything like that, but I was still surrounded by it. But yeah, once I started listening to music that was just kind of around, the stuff that's popular, Beatles, Led Zeppelin, but maybe not necessarily familiar to somebody who's like 12 or 14 or whatever. My dad being more of an expert on that stuff, knew all the cool bands to introduce me to and allowed me to kind of discover them for myself, which is really like a kid in a candy store type of feeling, when you get to delve into a band's catalog and the only thing you know about them is that it's going to be, it's going to be good. Very thankful I got those experiences.
Absolutely. I started playing drums and percussion at age 11 and was able to kind of, move up the ranks a little bit and do some, B-circuit tours and kind of stuff, and more in the melodic hard rock, heavy metal kind of stuff. The influences that you guys have discussed always had an impact on me. So I just wanted to say, you guys are awesome. I wish you the best and keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thanks so much. We really appreciate that. What was your name again?
My name is Kent.
Kent, that's right. Yeah. Thank you, Kent.
Yeah.
That
You're
means
welcome.
a lot to us that you called in and
Yeah, thanks
so much.
for calling. Thanks for calling.
You're
Ken.
welcome. You're welcome. I'm going to
Thanks a
continue
lot,
to
Kent.
listen. You're welcome.
All
I
right.
wish you guys the best.
We
Thanks,
have a
Keith.
comment. We have a comment on Twitter right now from Verwayne Greenhoe. Fresh Ink Group. I was listening to some of Wide Track's music this afternoon from their website. I heard music that reflect one of my favorite bands, Steely Dan. I went to a lot of concerts by the Dan. Loved your music, by the way. I got to agree with Verwayne. I was hearing some Fagan in there. I thought. Sadly, of course, Brecker died less than a year ago, so Steely Dan is going to have to evolve and move on. But yeah, that's high praise indeed. Thanks, Verwayne.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, that's got to be by osmosis because, I mean, we wouldn't even presume to attempt to emulate the great Steely Dan, but suffice to say, they are one of the greatest bands in the world to us.
I've got lots of their albums in my collection as well.
And
love them.
It's worth drawing the distinction here too. You'll hear a lot of indie bands and especially amateur bands will try to mimic big bands like Steely Dan or Yes or Genesis, or if we're going to drop names. But there's a difference between mimicking and letting them influence your style, taking what they do for you and run with it. And that's what I hear when I hear Wide Track music. I don't hear you guys trying to sound like somebody else, but I hear you being influenced by or even paying tribute to a little bit of the stylings of some other people while you make them your own and package them your way. And I really admire that and like that.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
That to us is the highest goal, is to just manifest our own musical souls. And obviously everyone's influenced by something. You can't hide that, nor should you run from it. But I was having a conversation with a friend the other day saying, imitation is so common and almost just a given, like that's what you do. But we've got all of this uniqueness in the world that goes squandered, and why not embrace that? I understand how it feels to, kind of be the loner, kind of standing out and not having a lot of, everybody wants to blend in with the crowd and whatnot, but I think the most satisfying musical, creative pursuits are achieved by way of just saying, you know what, I don't care. This is what I'm feeling, and this is what I'm thinking, and having some faith in that. And there's got to be some people out there that'll connect with that spirit.
Yeah, talking about the imitation, one of the bands that takes a lot of slack for that these days is some other Michigan rockers, Greta Van Fleet. Well, they're just a Led Zeppelin knockoff. But you know what? I like this band. I think they got a great sound. And I'm glad to hear some of these young guys coming out with some music that actually sounds like old school music. Yeah, it sounds like Led Zeppelin, but you know what? They do it well, and it's some good stuff. That's just my take on it.
There's something about that that feel. My girlfriend and I were listening to the Black Crowes last night, and there's just something about that tradition of that roots rock, that Bad Company, and bands like that. We're huge Stones fans, of course, and that kind of stuff doesn't enter our music so much, I don't think, but those bands are kind of great at keeping you grounded in, like, before you start getting a little too much in the head, just put on some good Stones or Bad Company, and Zeppelin was probably the intersection of everything great, including that.
That's my all-time favorite band right there, Led Zeppelin.
Us too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't beat them.
Now, as far as wide track music goes, the thing that I think is unique about you guys are great musically, but Ron, your voice, man, you got this really cool voice that doesn't sound like anybody. And I mean that as the highest compliment. It's a unique voice. If I'm flipping through my MP3 player, I've got a couple of wide track albums on there, and if I put it on shuffle and I go from one song to another from different groups, and a wide track song pops up, the moment I hear your voice, I'm like, that's wide track. I know it. It's unique.
Oh, thank you, Bean. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
So we know about you and Zach, and from what I understand, you and Zach are wide track. That's what wide track is the two of you. But you also play with other musicians too. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for a while it had been different people in and out. I mean, I wouldn't really remember. I was probably around 5 or something like that at the time.
Yeah, keep making that point.
Well, just in case, you catch the context. Anyways, but, many people would come to play on certain songs and play for live shows. And occasionally, write songs and stuff like that, parts, whatever. But never really was it more of a collaborative effort, at least from my understanding, until, I said that I wanted to pursue that and writing and all that stuff, and basically and kind of selfish and saying, give me a piece of this. I don't care. I want it, But yeah, I mean, I think it's sometimes necessary to have musicians play for live shows, even if you can't play with the ones that have been with you for 5 years or whatever. But
it's funny, when I first started, it's all on their bio or whatever, but you can always, I have a lot of musician friends that are great musicians, but everyone kind of by this age, they have their own projects that they're doing, or they want to play cover gigs, make money. And so for me, it was like, well, there's no promise of this person being here next year, and to get in a situation, I bet, I'd been through a lot of bands that have broken up. And so when you're collaborating on music, a band breaks up, it's like, well, can't play those songs anymore. So it all kind of stemmed from just this fierce protectiveness of the stuff that I was writing. And if somebody was going to be a partner, then I would have to really feel that confidence. And it just never happened until Zach said, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And, of course, now he's writing. And I was never a great guitar player to begin with. I always kind of consider myself to be like a John Lennon type of musician, where I play rhythm guitar and sing, and drums were always my thing. But now that Zach plays guitar like way, way better than me, he's starting to write some stuff that this was always my dream, was to be in a situation where somebody was writing stuff that kind of pushed me as a musician to be able to just work on my drums and vocals. And, and eventually we would like to get enough popularity to where we can bring in some other people that say, man, we really love what you're doing and we think we can add to it. And, Zach is going to be going to college in a couple of years, and he just hasn't met any kids his age that are really, as advanced players or into the same stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've met some incredible musicians, but it just kind of goes to show how many different types of, schools of music there are, I suppose, jazz and classical and everything, it's just been a humbling experience. But yeah, it has kind of shaped the lineup of the band, not knowing many people that are into the same progressive rock roots and all that. I'm sorry.
I started to say, as book authors, we can really appreciate you wanting to maintain that ownership, that control of what you write. If you collaborate with somebody else and then that person's career path or life path takes them off in another direction, now you have something that's, co-owned, and it starts to be questionable what you can do with it. So we really appreciate that. But you're going to be playing at Crowfoot in Pontiac on November 7th. At around 9 o'clock or so. Tickets available on the site. What kind of lineup would we see there? You and Zach, and then you're going to have a couple more musicians supporting your show?
We're going to do a trial by fire. We're going to play as a duo. And, the way that we looked at it was, we have a couple things going for us. Number one, there's precedent of that now with bands like Royal Blood and, the White Stripes even.
White Stripes.
And Yeah. And the other thing is that Zach's playing a baritone guitar on a lot of songs. So it's got much lower tuning and it fills more of the low end. So we've been doing a lot of rehearsing and recording of these, like live streams and stuff of just the two of us. And so far it's kind of working. Obviously we would love to get a bass player and love to get even another guitar player, another drummer. But until we find just the perfect individuals, it just makes more sense to keep it pure, I guess is probably the best word.
Great. Yeah, that ought to be a good show.
Well, how about we introduce the audience to your music and play one of your songs?
Great.
You guys up for that?
Yeah.
I vote for The Chosen.
Okay. Well, there you go. Stephen's vote counts. So here is The Chosen by Wide Track.
Believe and know
All right. That was The Chosen from the newest wide track album, The Unwakening. And what's the story behind that song, guys?
Well, in the tradition of the progressive rock bands, this was a concept album. And Zach and I were really had a lot of conversations about, something kind of a bucket list type thing. But as the songs started developing, it's one of those things where I don't know how you guys write in terms of, do you select a thing to write about before you embark upon writing it, or does it just kind of?
Oh, definitely. It all starts with an idea.
Yeah, we're planners.
Yeah, for us, it's like we're just waiting, let the muse kind of just get to working, get to playing, and let the sounds come out, and pretty soon you start seeing these ideas across these songs. And so this album kind of has a very apocalyptic, future dystopian type theme. And the
name of that album song, again?
The Unwakening.
The Unwakening.
Yeah, the Unwakening. Now, I reviewed it when it first came out. I reviewed it on my website, and I ended up, unfortunately, and I apologize, called it The Unawakening. And you had sent me an email about, hey, no, this is The Unwakening. What's that? Where did that come from? The Unwakening. Is there a meaning behind it?
Yeah. So we were really into the Twilight Zone, and in more recent times, shows like Black Mirror, and just these kind of science fiction dystopian things. And I was kind of thinking about how things are with social media, and it's kind of like just throwing this element that humanity isn't ready for in a lot of ways, and it's causing a lot of people to just behave in different ways than they would if they were in person. And so kind of the thesis of the album was, if you're trying to make the world better, how you go about that matters. Even if you're in the right or whatever, that doesn't give you an excuse to be cruel or to be dysfunctional. Because the only way that my brother said to me years ago, the person with more insight has to be the bigger person. And that really stuck with me. You see people feeling very righteous about their cause, and, they have a scorched earth kind of because of it. And that's just not sustainable. So we kind of took all these ideas and just in a really quick sum it up, the album is about a guy who starts getting followers on social media, builds up a really big following, he starts flaming, he gets very controversial, and as a result, he's got these huge numbers, and he just keeps getting more and more legions of people following him, and he gets a God complex, and he's got people around him that care about him, seeing him go off the reservation. And so this song was basically about him saying, let's, there's another song called Boyers, which is basically like, okay, there's this video show on YouTube, let's say, and it's outing people who have done things like cut people off in traffic, and they vote on, how it's kind of this mob rule type thing. They vote on the punishment of these people. And so that's kind of what it's about. It's this fear of moving into inhumanity, and the unwakening being that people are just, we're smarter than this, and why are we descending into this? But it's interesting. There's a new show on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And a lot of these tech guys that invented these companies, Twitter and Facebook and such, they knew that this was one of the downsides of social media when they created it. But the outrage is the business model. It's what keeps people on these platforms the longest. And that's just insane. It's just insane that we have this bad for humanity business model of the most popular thing in existence. So it's just kind of
with social media, and you're talking about that. I mean, it tends to bring out the anonymous coward, because you can put up a fake name and a fake picture and just attack. Whereas, in years past, when you didn't have social media, these were the guys that were usually just quiet and, but now, hey, we got this forum where I can, call myself Dave and go out there and just attack everybody. But,
in the day, if you get punched in the mouth for saying things,
and so you can hide behind the fake name now.
And now the news channels are filled with people whose job title is talking head.
Yeah.
They exist for no other purpose than to come in there and have opinions about things.
Yeah, there's a great book from the 80s by a guy named Neil Postman called Amusing Ourselves to Death, and he kind of talks about when television was invented, it kind of, just in a nutshell, made us dumber. It made us crueler, made us, it became infotainment. And, in a lot of ways, social media is saying, hold my beer. Yeah. But there's a lot of great things to be had from it as well. So it's not.
Oh, definitely. I've said this numerous times. You being musicians, you've got a product, you've got albums to sell, and Stephen and I being authors, we've got books. We've got the world at our fingertips. I've heard from people who have bought my book in South Africa and New Zealand and Australia and Ireland. I remember one of the first fan letters, so to speak, that I got through the publishing company was this teenage girl in Ireland who had bought my first novel, and she just told me that she bought it with the intention of reading a chapter or two, and then she would read it, each night. But she said she ended up she bought it in the afternoon and sat down and read it, and next thing she knows, it's like 12 o'clock midnight, and she finished the book, and she enjoyed it. I'll just put it that way. But she wrote this nice email, and this is Ireland, and I'm like, Ireland? I'm in Michigan. I wrote this book in Michigan, and this is a girl in Ireland. This is the cool side of social media, because we hear from people from all over the world. This podcast that we're doing right here, we got people from all over the world that listen to this. So, this is truly international. We've talked about that a little bit off the air. But speaking of your albums, now this new one is your fourth album. How about you give a little bit of a rundown on each of the albums?
Yeah. Well, the first one is the self-titled, and I wrote that I had some friends help me with playing some of the instruments. And my friend Andy Padalin, who's in the Detroit band Sponge.
Sponge, yeah.
They're great. They're still going. And he and his brother recorded the original Sponge albums that kind of broke them through, and now they're in the band. And so, anyhow, he did the recording and just really helped me and gave me a lot of encouragement. And, I had all these songs that I had written while Zach's mom was asleep upstairs, so I'm trying to be quiet, and I'm writing on my acoustic guitar. And I found, this doesn't really translate to when you want to really rock out at a show. So the second album was kind of like, let's see how heavy I can get without really going into a metal thing. I wanted to, it's kind of a little experiment that I had in my head. I want to see how heavy you can get without being an actual metal band. And I love the second album. The second album had some of my favorite songs on it. And then the third album was I met my friend Brian Burleson after we hadn't seen each other since high school. And so all these years later, a mutual friend reintroduced us, and we kind of picked right up back where we left off, and we were both huge fans of Pink Floyd. And so the first thing that we did was recorded a remake of Welcome to the Machine.
And I've heard that. Excellent. Go to YouTube, everybody, and find that wide track version of Welcome to the Machine. It kicks ass.
Oh, thanks, man. That was right around the time that Zach joined the band, and the third album was already written when I met Brian and asked him to play lead guitar on it, and then Zach wanted to play bass. And so after we did that, Brian kind of had rekindled his passion for his. He does a kind of a a really cool noir blues band called Big B and the Actual Proof, and they're Nick Cave kind of vibe. And he really got into that, so he went off to do that. And meanwhile, Zach was like, I want to play guitar on this next album. I want to record it, and I want to co-write it with you. And then after a while, he was like, I want to write all the guitar and all the bass, and you write all the drums and all the vocals, and that'll be our kind of musical partnership. And I was like, cool, I've been dreaming of this. And it's really a step forward, I think, with the actual, because my writing, like I said, was always kind of Pink Floyd-ish in simplicity, and I always liked those songs. But now it's getting into an area where the guitar is just incredibly unique and challenging to write to in a good way. And we've since released a couple other new songs since the Unwakening, and that kind of has even gone even further in that direction. So,
yeah. Now on the website, you have a great picture of Zach, 3 years old, holding your first CD right out of the box. And I'll tell you, you can look at his face and see there's something going on there already.
What is this?
What is this, and what is this, and how can I be a part of it? But back in the early days when Zach wasn't involved, you had to move around a bit. You moved to L.A. You did the Voodoo Music Experience in New Orleans, Georgia, Kiss cover band. Can you tell us some of your journey back in those early days?
Oh man, yeah, it's been a long journey. It's I was in a Kiss tribute band for a few years when we moved out to Georgia, where Zach was born, and that was a blast. We got to tour Nova Scotia, and Kiss hadn't been to Nova Scotia since the 70s, so we were kind of treated like Kiss. There's some video of that on YouTube, but under the band was called Kisstory. And, experiences like that, there was a while there where I wanted to start a tribute band business, and I had put together like an AC/DC tribute and a Van Halen and a Black Sabbath, and it's just that it was a lot of work, and you eventually come to like, well, what am I going to put the majority of my focus on? Because time is always the enemy, the lack of time. And then when Zach came on board, Zach and I play in a cover band as well called The Vintage, and that's kind of our money-making, fun, entertainment, dance rock side of things. And we had a lot of fun doing that as well, but yeah, I went to school out in LA in the late 80s, Musicians Institute, and got to experience playing on the LA scene for a little while, and that was a lot of fun. But it really humbles you because there's just so many great bands that are kind of plugged into the scene. And even then, playing like progressive music it's always had this really uncool aspect about it to the general public. I don't know. It's hard to explain. We think it's super cool, but it is an acquired taste for some people, and some people, you don't see a lot of females at those concerts. But I don't know. What do you think about that, Zach?
I don't know. I think it's just it's an important part to have a common knowledge with common people. You don't want make it look like you're doing something that doesn't include people that you think it should include. So, maybe not necessarily pandering to the tastes of, but more specializing to the tastes of more people. It's kind of allowed us to express ourselves in ways that we think are more impactful than the ones that are maybe as progressive or complicated.
Yeah.
I think it's about time to roll another song, Beam.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, how about we do Unveiled?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's one of our favorites. It's that was one of the first songs we wrote when Zach came up with the guitar. Said, "Hey, what's this?" And I knew we were off and running with that one.
All right, cool. Well,
yeah.
Here is Unveiled. That is Unveiled by Wide Track. That song has just a killer vibe to it. Really killer vibe.
Awesome. Thank you. That's one of our favorites.
You know, Ron, I was looking through your bio stuff and all the information on your website, and I got the impression that your father, your late father, Zach's grandfather, he played an important role in encouraging you, helping you out, helping you with the Nashville recording situation. Can you tell us a little bit about him and what happened with him?
Oh yeah, my dad was just he was like Clint Eastwood and John F. Kennedy mixed together. He was just a remarkable man. A man's man to the bone, old school, hardest working man I've ever known. And he raised my brothers, my two brothers and I, as a single father. And when Zach was finally born, he was the one that asked us to move back to Michigan. He was really putting the pressure on. This is my first grandchild. You guys got to get back here. So when we moved back, it was literally weeks after that he got his diagnosis. And the doctor was like, yeah, you got a year and a half and there's nothing you can do about it. You're a goner. And so we just tried to make the most of that time. And he was just, he was a sports guy. He was a police officer when I was growing up. And then he quit the police department to start his own business, a defense business that my brother and I grew up working for him and still do. And just really taught us a lot about hard work and being responsible and all that stuff, and just the usual dad stuff. I try to familiarize Zach with the stories and just talk about him as much as possible. And boy, he really, really loved Zach. He was being a grandfather. That was the tragic thing about it, was you could just see that becoming a grandfather was his reward in life, and he just only got to experience it for a short time. But it really just kind of brought everything into sharp focus. Up until that point, I was just a drummer, and I wrote songs, but I was really shy about sharing them with people. And, I'm sure you guys know the story about all the creative people out there who kind of are scared to share their stuff, almost like they need permission from people to share their stuff, and when he died, it was just like this, like, what am I doing? Who am I waiting for to give me permission to be happy and to be creatively satisfied? It was just like really punctuated how absurd that was. And so that's when Wide Track was born, shortly after that. And so his influence will always loom large in my life, obviously. And, hopefully I see a lot of his traits in Zach. One of the cool things was his mother, my grandmother, was just the greatest, as well. And she got to spend a lot of time with Zach as he was growing up. So he missed my dad's influence, but he got my grandmother's influence quite more than any kid I've ever known, having with a great-grandparent. And so a lot of those traits were indeed passed along to him through her. But that's it.
Well, we're sorry about his passing, but it sounds like that was a real turning point for you, when you really decided it's time to decide what you're going to do and take your shot. Yeah,
it's really the thing that we try to talk about with people. We've connected with a lot of people like Beam and a lot of our people in our Wide Track group on Facebook and our email list and stuff. Is we hear from people all the time about that's one of the things we're always going on about is it's just how crazy is it to ask permission to be happy, to be creatively fulfilled. And it's this weird illusion that we've been taught in society that only the worthy get to be creative and to create things that are the public consumes or whatever that the public appreciates.
Yeah,
And
but who
that's
decides who's the worthy, you know?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it is it doesn't, just do it, man. And coupled with the idea that it's inevitable that you're going to get haters, you're going to get beat up on no matter who you are. I mean, some of the best authors and movie makers and musicians in the world, you hear of people all the time slam them, So it's just, you got to just make peace with that. Like, that's a given. Yeah. It's inevitable. And so what?
It's part of life.
I'm going to proceed nonetheless. And, it totally is. Totally is.
Yeah, people engaged in the creative process, they always have to take risks and put themselves out there in order to find and stretch and discover what they can do. And that encouragement and support from friends and family makes a big difference. We're kind of curious about Zach being a teenager. What kind of support do you get? Are your friends into your music, or are they kind of standoffish and not interested, or what's it like among you and your teenage peers?
I think many people can relate. A lot of times, your friends just aren't really familiar with the stuff that you do. It's like leading a double life or whatever. They haven't had too many opportunities to come and see us live, so it's totally understandable. And, there's plenty of other bands to check out that, are way more popular than even one that's from your friends or whatever. But, yeah, I think it's just enough that I've got, my dad's influence on me and, the musical connection that we've got, because it beats just doing stuff in your room alone. It's cool to write with somebody,
Always.
Well, my question for you, Zach, on that subject there about friends and whatnot, are kids your age or young men your age and young ladies as well, are they familiar with like Pink Floyd and Rush and Yes and the bands that you're influenced by? Is this younger generation familiar with these bands or not so much?
I would say, maybe half and half. I think there's a lot of bands that are just, completely recognizable anywhere. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, bands we love, bands that are pretty popular even with my generation. But there's a lot of bands, even ones as popular as Soundgarden or King Crimson or Yes that, it's very unlikely that people from my generation have heard of. It's kind of a weird disconnect, but not so weird at the same time when, we still like a lot of the same stuff. I like a lot of more popular, newer music, and they would probably dig all the stuff that I'm into if they were introduced to it or whatever. But, yeah, I think it's cool to see what kind of common ground you've got in those unlikely scenarios.
Definitely. So we're about out of time here. Can you guys run through all the different ways and places that they can find you? Website, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Tell us the names that they should search.
Yeah. Our website is widetrackband.com. Our subscribe, I guess, address is widetrackmusic.com. And our YouTube is YouTube/widetrack, and everything else is Widetrack Band. Am I forgetting anything there?
We are Zach and Ron Tippin. Our names are also linked to our band in case they are
all right.
ever brought up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I kind of lost Steven here. I'm hoping he gets back in here before the end of the show. But I definitely want to say thank you both for taking the time out on this Wednesday night and coming here and chatting with us.
It was our pleasure. And Steven, thank you. It's really cool to hear your story about your formative years as a musician growing up with the progressive band.
There is more to that story. I've dusted off the keyboards and started setting up some equipment here. So I might need to call and get some advice on how to use Pro Tools and some of this newfangled stuff. I used to go into the studio and have the engineers set everything up for me, and I just point toward the keyboards, and that's not how things work anymore. And you guys are at the cutting edge, so we applaud and appreciate all that you're doing out there.
Well, hey, you know what? Feel free to hit us up anytime. We love talking music and books, too. Both of us are just voracious readers. And, you know, I started reading one of Beam's books here recently, but I'm always just bouncing. I have like ADD with reading. I've got probably 60 books going at any one time.
I know how that goes.
Yeah.
All right, we hope to have you guys on again one of these days, so keep that in mind.
Anytime. We really, yeah, sounds
All
great.
Right.
Thanks to you
Stephen.
both for stopping by. It was good meeting you, Zach, and good talking to you, Ron.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Stephen, you want to tell them where they can find a replay of this show?
YouTube, freshinkgroup.com, beamweeks.com. We're trying to put them everywhere that you can find them.
And remember to get on Facebook, YouTube, and find the website for widetrackband.com and show them some love and some support.
Next week, author Jeannie Sharp, Christian romance author. She'll be our guest. Call in, stop by, have a listen.
And thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will catch you again next week.
Thanks.
You've been a part of Voice of Indie, a production of Fresh Ink Group. Spread the word, support our guests, then find us at freshinkgroup.com and be sure to hashtag Fresh Ink Group.